Gray Zone's Aaron Mathe hosted Glenn Greenwald this week. It was really interesting and fun to listen to. So at first they talked about Russiagate in the first video, continued debunking some of the bullshit Russiagate stuff, including that whole story that was huge in the summer about Russians putting bounties on American soldiers in Afghanistan. But anyway, then the second video they kind of talked about, in Glenn Greenwald's own words, how he's been blackballed from Democracy Now! So I found it to be interesting and fun. So Sam, I sent you the link. Did you get to watch the video?
Yeah, I got to watch it. It was really interesting. I must admit it was a bit of a repeats of the old favorites, like a concert that you go to and you know what they're going to talk about. Although there were some obviously updates on the more recent stuff on Russiagate and how even when Biden administration is trying, we'll get to that though. Even when Biden administration is trying to say that certain stories are fake or to an extent de-escalate tensions, the media is still very much in favor of it and
Yeah.
in favor of pushing this specific narrative that Russia is aggressively intervening in American politics.
Exactly. And I guess I have to agree with your first take. You just have to look at Aaron Matt's face and you can see how much he's enjoying this conversation, to know that
Yeah, the
they've
whole
talked about this a few times and they're talking
it
about it again, just like me now. He's like having a blast. But anyway,
was really funny because his whole face when Glenn Greenwald was talking,
yeah.
like whenever he made a point, Armative would go
Yeah, I know.
just speechless. He was clearly floored by no, but it was a
Yeah,
great talk.
it
It was
was
just
music.
great for it was like a great abstract of the whole, like a brief on the whole thing till
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the most interesting parts for me was the whole democracy now part, which was one of the main parts of the video. So we've talked about this a bunch of times. I used to love democracy now back in the day. It's not that I stopped loving them. I guess you just start watching different things, and I hadn't watched them for the past few years, so I wasn't even aware of this. But Glenn Greenwald, everybody knows that he used to go on Democracy Now like every other day, right? He said that his first five books that were published, he went on them the first week there, and he would, like, promote his book. And during the Snowden time, I mean, every other day it was Glenn Greenwald on the channel on Democracy Now. But now he's saying that they haven't invited him for in the past few years. And even when his latest book came out, which was, all about corruption in Brazil and Lula and all these things that you would think that Democracy Now would just eat up. I mean, that's just right up their alley. They've had Dilma Rousseff in studio before, and all of these things. So it is really shocking that they wouldn't have him. And he said that, his publisher, who always gets all these other unknown writers on Democracy Now, called them and said, hey, Glenn has a new book, would you like him to come on? And apparently they haven't responded or anything. So I found this to be very shocking. And Glenn theory and Aaron's theory, and I mean, it makes sense, is because of Russiagate. So apparently Democracy Now were also swollen up in this whole, like, Russiagate story, which I don't even know what Russiagate is about, because it's like, it makes no sense. It's the smallest thing, but I didn't know that they had fallen to in such an extent, according to the way Aaron Mate and Glenn Green were talking about it, to the whole
Uh,
Russiagate thing, and trying to block out anybody who would come and would have an opposing, challenging view to, like, Trump being a huge puppet of Russia, and Russia, getting Russia the reason why Trump got elected and all that. But yeah, what
my
did you
my
make of
my
it?
take is first of all, I would say it's just that these Intercept, because they talked about Intercept, Democracy Now, and The Nation, the former employer of Aaron Mate. The Nation was also the publisher of like Gore Vidal, somebody who I really liked. And I think they are far more, at least these days, they are far more domestically focused. And if they don't agree with you on the domestic narrative, it's not that they blackball you or anything. It's just they don't like you, so they don't invite you as much,
Yeah,
um, because they don't. So they didn't go. I think it wasn't just Russiagate in case of, for example, Democracy Now and stuff. It was probably because people like Glenn Greenwald didn't view Trump as such a unique threat as some other people did, which
Yeah, yeah.
I think Democracy Now! And some other people clearly did. I would also say that I think Glenn Greenwald is probably taking a bit of a hit because of his views. Not that his views are bad or anything. It's just because of the way his views has been reflected in the media on transgender issues. Because he's been portrayed as somebody who's anti-transgender rights, which I think is far from truth. He has maybe done some couple of articles about some transgender people who had uh, like reverse surgery or they regret. So I think there it's just not about the Russiagate stuff. With Aaron Machado, I think that was really just largely about his Russiagate stuff. And yeah, well, it's a narrative that sells, it attracts a large audience, and it's good for the establishment, so they allow it to flourish and they feed it. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's sad, but
establishment, yeah, but in the progressive world, like I was never enticed by that story. I mean, I was like, sure, would Russia try to meddle in elections or do whatever they can, like every other country? But what's your point? Are you getting to so far as saying
I
that they have such an insane control over the US? Does that even make sense to you? I mean, you know how much evidence you would have to see to think that the Russians have such insane power and influence in this like caricature way. So I mean, it was never like an interesting story for me. So I find it surprising that people were so, involved and consumed by this story. But yeah, I don't know about the other stuff that you were talking about. I wasn't aware of the trans stuff.
oh I think it's very minor, but yeah, I would say I don't know, but I do think it's I agree with you. Maybe Democracy Now! Or TYT, for example, their audience
TYT, I
wouldn't be.
remember they were consumed by it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but apparently it seems that even like Democracy Now! And TYT or whoever, whenever they focus on Trump, they get a lot more attention. So, or Trump and
Trump,
Russia,
yeah,
especially
yeah. Yeah,
Trump
I
and
mean, there were
Russia.
so many ways. I don't deny that, but I mean, the Russia stuff were probably the least interesting things that had to do with Trump. I mean, he would give you a nice,
Well,
interesting story that wasn't filled with conspiracies every single day. So you didn't really need to fall
sure.
back on that.
No, but that's, I guess that I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it was a narrative that was, it is surprising that Democracy Now! That was very
Yeah.
anti-war always and all that. Yeah, I think the thing is they don't like Putin a lot either because he's not a liberal. He's a very
Uh,
conservative. I mean, he's,
of course, yeah.
his government is very anti-gay. He's very dictatorial. So they just, in this, again, it's like Saddam and George Bush thingy. They go with the enemy they like a bit more.
I don't know, but
That's the
then,
only excuse. I'm just excusing
yeah,
whatever.
no,
Yeah, I think. I mean, I wish they were a bit more skeptical of this whole Russiagate thing. And this was a great talk of how, like, people who were within those organizations even had to either leave or were pushed out or
yeah.
uh, they weren't used as contributors anymore as much uh, because of well their difference of opinion.
Exactly. To such an extent as not having Glenn Greenwald. I mean, you can run like probably two independent media networks by just having Glenn Greenwald. Like you just have like one staff and that would be enough. Like you'd be covered. But yeah, and then they go on so they talk about, why would this happen? Why would they do that? So they talk a little about manufacturing consent or like funding and stuff, and they pretty much reach the conclusion that they say, they didn't want to be blamed again for Trump winning, and they kind of just wanted to fit in. But I don't see why fit in now. And the democracy now part, it can't be about funding for them unless they had funding issues because they haven't tried to
Uh,
change their model or expand in forever, which is good. Just stick to what you were doing. So I don't even know what they would need more funding. Like the Young Turks, I can see they wanted to expand, expand, and expand, and there's this whole thing of them getting the $20 million loan, so maybe that affected them and all this. But Democracy Now! Look like they
I,
have their set show, and that's how they want to be.
I I have a feeling that it was more. with the fact that they wanted to fit in and the
Yeah,
fact that they felt responsible for Trump because you had Intercept, which I mean, when Greenwald left Intercept, he did an interview with Jimmy Dore, and he said that it wasn't because Intercept is funded or was funded primarily by Pierre Omidyar, who's
was, yeah.
who was a billionaire tech type thing, and he was saying that the pressures never came from him, and he never interfered editorially or anything like that. It was the managerial class, and the managerial class is much more involved with DC, and you know they know the people there. They hang out with it. So there is more probably a not closer links there. So I think it had more to do with that than funding. Even in the case of TYT, I think they wanted to keep this weird sort of a middle ground
Hmm.
that didn't exist. Maybe so they kept trying like, oh no, it's about his financial ties to Russia or whatever. So I think they really yeah, but it wasn't like that middle ground didn't really exist. So I don't know about I never looked at their numbers like never compared their numbers before and after in terms of views and subscription and all that. So maybe it worked. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, true. But okay, and then just one last thing. Um, Aaron Mattis said that as pretty much a quote from him. He's like, at the core of it, they're noble people, but Russiagate broke their brains. So he's talking about Democracy Now, where he worked for over 10 years. I don't recall seeing him too much on Democracy Now. I don't know why. Maybe I
I think he was
remember him from the Real
back.
News. Yeah,
I
maybe he
think he was
worked in the back.
behind the
Yeah.
scenes. Yeah.
Exactly. But so, I mean, I would kind of agree with Aaron Matta here in the sense that I don't know if they're noble people or not. I don't know them. But I would just say that a lot of the time they still continue to cover much better stories than out there. So keep on watching Democracy Now! But yeah, just I guess keep an
You
eye
know,
on them
I
for
mean,
now.
it's always, in fact, it's more, when somebody's lying about something, they are basically agreeing with you. They're just lying. But when somebody is not lying and they actually believe something, it's a bit more frustrating. So
Yeah.
in a way, it's like, yes, they are noble or whatever. They're good people they're not bad, evil people,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, it gets frustrating because of that, partially.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so people, let us know what you think. Please leave your comments, thoughts in the comment section below. Any last words, Sam?
No, thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you for watching. So please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video. Thank you.